Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for a great webinar. Together with Axiom Space, we hope to open your minds for new ideas for research in the microgravity condition of the International Space Station. The call for proposal for science and technology research on board the International Space Station, we opened that call for proposal last September, and because of the situation here in Israel, we extended the deadline until the end of this month, March 31st. But the idea for the call for proposal was to promote the Israeli research, to support the space ecosystem, to bring more Israeli companies, startups, researchers to try the technology or science research activities on board the ISS. And we are not doing that alone. Similar to the model that we did on AX1, we have a scientific committee that will review all the submission. Leading that committee is Inbal Kreis, and she's working together with our international board, where you can see Dr. Jacob Cohen from NASA Ames, Charlie Bolden, Pete Warden from the Breakthrough Initiative, and Dr. Jeffrey Hoffman from MIT. The idea in this webinar is actually present you what it is possible, what is Axiom Space allowing to do on board the ISS, what is Axiom high interest or main interest right now. And without further ado, I think I will lead the baton to Simon Jenner, the ecosystem manager in Axiom Space.
Thank you, Melody, and thank you everyone for being here. It's a real privilege for us to be working so closely with Rakia mission. Eytan was one of our inaugural astronauts on AX1, and I think what Eytan has been able to do with the creation of Rakia mission and what Rakia have continued to do is an amazing example of what can be done with commercial spaceflight. Today, my team is going to share tips and tricks about how you can best prepare your project for this call for proposals, and how Axiom can enable it. Axiom and Rakia have been partners, as Melody said, since the end of the AX1 mission, and we're continuing to strengthen our relationship in order to try and help build together the Israeli space ecosystem. So I'm going to start off today telling you a little bit about Axiom Space. I'm then going to throw to three of my colleagues. First up is going to be John Selmartin. John is our payload project manager lead at Axiom Space. He's going to be talking about some of the facilities which are on board the ISS, which would be available for use, potentially, for your project on future Axiom missions or other. Then we'll be throwing to Jason Aspiotis. Jason is our director in space infrastructure and logistics. Jason's going to be talking about the future of low Earth orbit and how some of the research projects which you might be considering today could help build the low Earth orbit ecosystem of the future. And then finally, we're going to throw to Lucy Lowe. Lucy Lowe is our chief scientist here at Axiom. She'll be talking a little bit about some of the successful projects which we've run on our AX1, 2, and 3 missions so far. And that can probably give you some guide as to what type of projects will work quite nicely on future Axiom missions. So we were established in 2016 with the intention to replace the International Space Station. As many on the call may know, the ISS is an amazing machine, probably the best piece of infrastructure that's ever been built by humans. But it is a machine and it has a limited lifespan. At the moment, it's looking to be funded till about the end of this decade, at which point the governments that have created the ISS will no longer be looking to support that infrastructure. This is where commercial players like Axiom come in. So we are building a commercial replacement for the ISS. We were very lucky and pleased to be successful in 2020. We awarded a contract from NASA to extend the habitable volume of the ISS. So we will be building Axiom Station as a part of the ISS until the ISS reaches the end of its life. And I'll show you a little bit about that in coming slides. At the point that ISS retires, we can disconnect, and the astronauts that were previously going to the ISS will now be coming to Axiom Station. I'll also talk a little bit today about some of the other business streams that we have. which is our spacesuits, and our private astronaut missions. So let me talk first about Axiom Station. So as I mentioned before, we are building the world's first commercial space station. This starts with our first module, Habitation 1. This HAB1 module is going to be housing 4 astronauts with sleeping quarters, as well as some laboratory manufacturing facilities. That's expected, it's in construction now, it's progressing very well, and it's expected to launch in 2026. About a year later, we'll be launching a very similar module, HAB2, almost identical, which will be expanding again the habitable volume of the ISS by another 4 astronauts, as well as more research capacity. Again, another year after that, we'll be launching a dedicated research and manufacturing module. We'll also be launching as part of that the world's largest Earth observatory, viewing the Earth's surface from low Earth orbit. And then finally, we'll be launching our power and thermal module. This will contain our large solar panels, an airlock, and ability to dissipate heat from the station. At this point, Axiom Station will be self-sufficient, and at any point after that, we can disconnect from the ISS. I say self-sufficient, but it doesn't mean we're done. Axiom Station is going to continue to grow. We'll grow to potentially hold tens, hundreds, or maybe even thousands of people in low Earth orbit at some point in the future. So what I'm showing you here is the assembly sequence. So there is the Habitation 1 module joining onto the ISS, followed by the HAB2, the laboratory and manufacturing facility, and there is the Earth Observatory opening up. And then finally, you see there our power and thermal tower. I'll touch briefly on one of the other aspects of what Axiom does. Most people on this call are probably aware that humans are returning to the moon. We expect boots on the ground with NASA's Artemis 3 mission, launched a few years from now. And Axiom Space are building the spacesuits that will keep those astronauts alive on the lunar surface. So when astronauts go back to the moon, they will be walking around in Axiom spacesuits. What you see there is an early prototype of these spacesuits. The version that will go to the moon will have a different coloring in order to provide thermal protection, but it's a significant advantage over the previous Apollo era spacesuits and the spacesuits that are available on the ISS today. We'll also be building a version of these for Axiom Station. So a very similar, but not quite the same version, which will operate in low Earth orbit compared to the lunar surface. And I'll talk now about our private astronaut missions. So NASA has opened up the opportunity for private companies every now and then to access the ISS. So far, NASA has put out 4 opportunities for commercial companies to do this, and Axiom Space has been awarded those opportunities each of the 4 times. And we have flown 3 of those missions so far. As I mentioned, Eytan was one of our inaugural astronauts on our AX-1 mission, flying in 2022. He was accompanied by an Axiom Space commander, former NASA astronaut and now Axiom astronaut, Michael Lopez Alegria, pilot, an American, Larry Connor, and a Canadian mission specialist, Mark Pathy. They spent a planned 10 days on board the station and actually ended a few extra days due to bad weather at the landing site at the end, which I think Eytan could speak to that, but I believe the crew had a wonderful time enjoying the extra time on board the ISS. About a year later, in 2023, we launched our second private astronaut mission to the ISS. This was commanded by Axiom astronaut, Dr. Peggy Whitson, and she was accompanied by another private astronaut, an American, John Schaffner. And for the first time, Axiom flew government astronauts on one of our missions. So to make up the rest of the crew were 2 mission specialists from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Ali Al-Khani and Rayana. They spent 10 days in space, had a very successful mission, and we'll hear Lucy talk a little bit about the research they conducted during her presentation. And then very recently, just a couple of months ago, we had our AX3 mission. So this was our first fully government mission, where we had 3 customers from 3 different nations, again, commanded by Michael Lopez Alegria. And on this mission, we had an Italian astronaut as our pilot, Walter Villaday. Interestingly, Walter did not fly on behalf of ESA, which Italy is a very strong member of, but instead flew on behalf of the Italian Defense Force. He was accompanied by 2 mission specialists, Alper Gezeracci, the first Turkish astronaut. And if anybody watched the webcasts of the AX3 mission, you will see that the Turks had a wonderful time celebrating Alper. He has been a huge hero in his home country. And they were accompanied by Marcus Vond. Marcus is a Swedish astronaut and was flying on behalf of ESA. So Marcus was selected as a project astronaut in the recent ESA astronaut selection. And AX4 is coming up, planned towards the end of 2024. We have not announced that crew yet, but hopefully you'll see an announcement at some point in the coming months. And with that, I will throw to John.
Well, thank you very much. What I'll talk through is a little bit of the capabilities that we can rely on for your projects that you want to bring forward. As we mentioned, the space station that we're currently going to, the ISS, International Space Station, has 25 years of experience and life on it. We've operated thousands of payloads, literally. And so we have, if you can imagine a ground-based laboratory, we have facilities and hardware and items that you can take advantage of or use throughout the space station. We really just need a little bit of pre-coordination. So the real message here is, in general, if you design your own payload or your own project, if you're doing art, or if you're doing cellular biology, or if you're doing manufacturing, if you're bringing your own hardware and bringing your own systems, that's great. And we can accommodate that perfectly. We will need to do some testing and just make sure it's safe for the crew and safe for the vehicle, but we will work through that. On the other hand, if you want to reduce some of your costs, or maybe there's a subsystem or something, or a special need that you might have in conditioned stowage, or in imagery, or something like that, we can coordinate with the owner of those facilities and try to understand what you need, and then come and try to make some arrangements where we can share those facilities, utilize them, or access those consumables that you might need. But the real key here is planning is critical. So we do need to have conversations and talk about those and get into a schedule, because as you can imagine, with the number of flights, the number of researchers across the world that are using the ISS, all of those resources on ISS are in demand. And so we just need to coordinate and plan them. And so the key is we will work with you. My preference is we can answer generic questions in this forum, but my real preference is if you have any specific questions, or want to talk through some operational operations or options that you may be looking at, please get with Melody, and we can schedule some one-on-one time and just make sure we can understand what you're looking for, and we can maybe offer some options, and also talk through some of the risks that are involved. So this really is what we're trying to do, is get with any of you that need to it, or just want to sit and talk about things. We will try to evaluate understand what you want, evaluate what's available to help support your project, and keep you on a success-oriented path. And then we'll work in the arrangements or any of the expectations that are needed for each of those different facilities. I say this very generically because there are so many that are available. We don't have access just carte blanche, or we don't have immediate access to whatever we need. We need to schedule everything. And so even if you consider a refrigerator or a freezer, those are very constrained resources on orbit. And so if you have cellular biology that needs to freeze samples, we'll need to coordinate those capabilities or those assets. If you have imagery requirements that want to utilize, as Simon illustrated and is on the screen here, if you want to look out the window and have your art project displayed in the background, we can certainly do that. We just need to know up front what type of resources or what kind of facilities or systems that you will want to take advantage of. Some of the things to consider when we're looking at this is the level of availability or the level of demand for those usage. I mentioned the cold stowage, the freezer, the refrigerator. Those are high demand, and so our available use of those is probably pretty small, and we'll need to minimize our use of those. But if we just need access to a data stream or power or any of those kind of consumable resources, those are a lot easier to schedule, and so we can work through those. If we need access to microscopes or anything like that, there's a wide variety of options that are available, both government provided as well as commercial providers. So we'll talk through any kind of reliability, scheduling constraints. If we have to go to a commercial provider, some of our facilities on orbit are for-profit companies that have sent their systems up there, and for some of the more scientific expertise or discipline needs, we do have access to some pretty high-powered microscopes or DNA sequencers or other things like that, but it may come with an additional cost. And so we do want to understand those relationships, needs, and give you a ballpark of what to include or what to estimate for those if we need to go down that path. The other side of it is the risks. And so always, if you don't build it into your payload, you're relying on somebody else and somebody else's system. So that's a big consideration as you go through your design and thought process. It's great to take advantage of other things, but keep in mind that they are in control and they are setting the priorities, and they will set the maintenance schedule and how reliable and verifiable those things are. The pros going with it is it's on orbit, it's pre-certified, and so it's a very easy way to get through the readiness process that we need to get through by taking advantage of what's already flown or what's already on orbit. The downside, like I mentioned, is we do have to do that coordination and scheduling. What Simon mentioned was the Axiom flights specifically, and those are 2-week roughly missions to the ISS. The ISS is up there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they've been up there for 25 years. So we do also have access to other transportation mechanisms, as well as if it's a software or a data only that doesn't require hardware to be transported, but just requires maybe on-orbit crew time or imagery or observations. We can certainly coordinate those, and we don't need to be tied to that 2-week mission. So we do have access not just to the short 2-week missions, but we also have access to ISS at any time we're ready to go up there. And so I just wanted to open that up to and some people may be thinking a short mission. In a lot of cases, your operational concept, you might really need some longer term activities. And so we can talk about those and understand what your goals are, what your requirements are, and try to select the correct profile also to look at. So early on, we'll set down. We'll try to make sure we understand what you're looking for, and then try to lay out your options. And then once we decide that yes, that's a good selection, we agree with the approach, then Axiom will go coordinate the use of those resources, whether it be with NASA, whether it be with any of the other international partners. We've taken advantage on the X3 mission of one of the European facilities that were on orbit. Or we can take advantage of commercial services or commercial facilities. And again, those will just, Axiom will help that coordination process and scheduling of those resources. So rather than give you a bulletized list of every one of these hundreds of facilities that are out there, I've included a couple links, and I assume some of you may have seen these, some of you may have not, but each of these gives a high-level overview of both the ISS as well as some of the key or larger facilities that are available for research, and the consumables and services that are available for us. It does not go into a comprehensive detail, and that's where we can work individually and try to offer, after understanding what you want, offer some options. I'm not going to go into the background charts, but in here there's some background on all of the things you have to go through to get your payload project ready. After we get approved, we're going to go through this process of payload integration. And so we will talk through this and have you a dedicated person to help shepherd you through this. Don't take these dates or durations as what it has to be. This is just a representative order of events that we have to do. The timing is specifically tailored to what your project will be. So a simple art project may take much less time than a biological cell culturing activity, or any of the, if there's human research involved, it may take a different level of complexity. But we want to work with you is the message. So I think we're going to wait till the end for questions and answers, but I look forward to any of the questions that you might have, and I will turn it over to our next speaker.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Simon. Thanks, Molly. So yeah, great to be here. Excited to kind of give you our perspectives on really how Axiom Station fits into the overall vastly growing space ecosystem. And we're going to start with, we talked about the space station being built up. Simon did a great job talking about the astronaut missions we've done today and the vision of the future, whereby we have dozens, someday hundreds, someday thousands of people living and working in space. And that is core to our business case, and one of the core reasons we're building a space station in the first place. The other one that Lucy will talk a little bit about is about using the lack of gravity in space to manufacture new materials, new pharmaceuticals, new biotech, right? So using a space station as a factory in space for advancements in those kinds of verticals. But then what I want to talk about is in-space infrastructure logistics. And I'm sure you all know about the advancements that are happening really every week, with new capabilities being launched in communications, with the emergence of this mesh network or space internet, as some people call it, where you have thousands of commercial, national security, other government, allied, international satellites all being flown up there and being designed to be interoperable, to communicate with each other, to exchange information with each other, whether it's for communications, whether it's for Earth observation, space domain awareness, a lot of applications, right? So the build-up of this large interoperable infrastructure is happening as we speak. And then to go along with that, there's a lot of investments and technology development being done in the fields of reusability, of not just rockets, right, but also of satellite to spacecraft, whereby when you launch a spacecraft or a satellite up there, it can be refueled, it can be serviced, it can be moved, it can move itself more readily to different orbits or to avoid space debris or anything else, given that there's fuel reserves on orbit to support those kinds of operations. So the ecosystem is evolving. And along with the evolution of this ecosystem, we also see space stations evolving along with it. And space stations thus far have been sort of silos or one-stop destinations where you have astronauts and payloads going up and then astronauts and payloads coming down. And what we want to enable is a multi-mode of transactions between the space station and the rest of the ecosystem, whether it's data, so communications and allowing for data to be stored and processed on the space station, i.e. an orbital data center, or people, commodities, payloads, and systems moving not just from Earth to space station and back down again, but also from Earth to space station to other orbits, or from other satellites, other space stations back to our space station. So create those multiple nodes of logistics and ultimately economic transactions between the space station and the rest of the ecosystem. And so that said, we are designing our space station, Axiom Station, to support a multitude of in-space infrastructure, logistics capabilities around orbital transfer vehicles, maneuvering, rendezvousing, and docking our space station, active debris removal and robotics. So that's another area that we're looking at, how to use a space station to support those kinds of capabilities. Looking at refueling and servicing, how the space station can both be refueled and serviced, but also be used as a platform to support in-space refueling and servicing. And to that end, we have some active work around this, and I'm just presenting this stuff to you all to give you some ideas on the kinds of things that you could do potentially on the ISS the next few years, or on Axiom Station starting in 2026, 2027. And so we have an award right now, and this is public information, with the Space Force to look at how a commercial orbital transfer vehicle, an OTV, could approach Axiom Station. So the OTV is uncrewed, there's no humans, the space station is crewed with humans. And so how to safely approach, rendezvous, and engage in docking procedures with the space station. And this, again, to open up the aperture for how a space station transacts with the rest of the ecosystem, and in this case, orbital transfer vehicles. And again, this is also public information, but we have a contract with the Space Force to work on how robotics could be installed on the outside of the space station to manufacture larger structures, right? Whether it's additional modules, additional trusses, someday maybe very large antennas for broadband communications, and someday maybe even space-based power, right? So how to use it? So how to use a space station to support the manufacturing of larger infrastructure in space. And then orbital data center, which is something that we're working on right now, and this is an area of investigation that we could support today. And in case you're wondering, what is an orbital data center? As the picture shows in the background, it's not about supporting research and science, it's about projecting this capability to other satellites, right? So just like on the Earth, we have AWS and Google and Microsoft data centers supporting our laptops, our cell phones, and all our devices. In a similar way, we envision data centers in space supporting satellite to spacecraft with in-space data storage, processing, and associated capabilities. And so there's a plethora of applications that are pertinent to this around AI, ML, defense and cyber capabilities, mesh network management and resiliency, and some more advanced things around quantum computing and in-space robotics and autonomy. And an example of this, and this actually, the mission that Eytan flew up, AX-1, we had a collaboration with Amazon Web Service, and this is also public information. And with AWS, we flew a edge compute device that was designed and built for terrestrial applications, and we flew that device to the ISS to integrate it into the ISS's communications infrastructure and do demonstrations of edge computing around artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, data fusion, and other kinds of applications around data. And that machine has been up there since April 2022. And so next month, it will have its 2-year anniversary up on the ISS, having done an array of interesting edge compute demonstrations in collaboration with Amazon Web Services. And we have two additional machines up there. So the far left is the machine I just talked about. The middle machine, actually Hewlett-Packard, has an amazing GPU loaded machine up there that's been on the ISS since 2021, so for a few years now. On the far right, there's a machine that Axiom is building in-house, and we're flying that machine in August to the ISS to install it alongside the AWS and HP machines to again support a growing number of demonstrations of in-space compute for edge, cloud, AI, and cyber kinds of use cases. And this is a very interesting area to us. And if there's any payload ideas, demonstration ideas from your ecosystem, we'd love to talk to you about that. And just some examples of demos we've done. The top 3, again, are public knowledge. JAM's a Japanese entity. We did a demonstration of on-orbit data processing and fusion. Swiri and SpiderOak are American entities. And with them, we demonstrated cybersecurity measures and zero trust protocol. And we have a pretty interesting manifest of more demonstrations that we're working on the next few months. Can't talk about who, but I can give you sort of the top level feel of what we're doing. And it's mostly revolved around AI, ML, cyber, and other kinds of use cases for space processing. And this is my last slide, but this is the ultimate future we're aiming for. So when we have our first module going up to the ISS in 2026, the plan is to include laser communications terminals attached to our module that will give our module connection to relay assets and other downstream satellite assets in LEO, MEO, and GEO. And as part of that module, we will have essentially a rack full of server blades that will constitute the world's first commercial orbital data center to be used by dozens or hundreds of satellites in LEO, MEO, and GEO for all the kinds of use cases I mentioned before around cyber, AI, etc. So hopefully that gives you sort of a good idea around the things we're interested in, in-space robotics, mobility, ISAM, and orbital compute are pretty big areas that are of interest to us. Things we can support with demonstrations on the ISS and Axiom Station, and definitely things that have tremendous market applicability across the globe, not just the US. And here's my email in case anybody has any follow on questions or requests. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jason. And we will now move to Lucilla.
So thank you so much, everyone. And we're delighted to be here today. So I'm going to finish off with a little bit of inspiration and excitement with some ideas for some of the things that you might be thinking that you might want to do that could be really transformational for research and for science in a broader sense up in space. So I'm going to just talk through some of the research that we have done on our 3 missions, which Simon's told you about and John's told you about how we've managed to implement some of that science. Jason's been talking about the future of the infrastructure that we might need in space. And I'm going to be talking about some of the basic fundamental science and the opportunities there for research and for manufacturing and others. So this slide here is obviously with our very own Peggy Whitson, who has flown on one of our missions so far. And the idea of this slide is really just highlighting the fact that microgravity can be an incredible place for innovation. So when you remove gravity from the equation, there are a number of physical phenomena that become unveiled in a way that you just can't see here on Earth. From everything from cellular biology to molecular pathways, to how atoms and molecules interact with each other, to how humans change as they adapt to space, to the opportunity to do technology demonstrations, to look at things that are in the vacuum of space and the effect on materials and different kinds of technologies outside of space. And so there are these incredible opportunities to use microgravity that can uncover these previously unimaginable opportunities and allow scientists and innovators and entrepreneurs as well to start pursuing some really, as we say, revolutionary breakthroughs. So doing things in space that can be very transformative for research, for innovation, or for industry back here on Earth. So we've now launched, as we've said, 3 missions. So I think we can probably hop straight to the next slide because you guys have already heard about those fantastic missions. But what I wanted to do is just talk about some of the research highlights from those missions. So Eytan himself was one of our crew for AX1 and did an extraordinary amount of research while he was up there. But there was research looking at advanced optics manufacturing. So using different kinds of materials that could be manufactured or used in space that could generate more advanced kind of lenses for industrial and academic purposes back here on Earth. There were projects looking at heart cells and how they adapt and respond to microgravity to help us understand the changes that occur in the heart cells in space. Might they be related to changes that we see in cardiac cells as we age here on Earth? So in this case, using the microgravity environment to actually model accelerated aging in space that we can then use to develop different kinds of drugs or therapeutics down here on Earth. There were projects looking at technology demonstrations to look at monitoring of the air quality inside the International Space Station, which has implications for monitoring of buildings or environments back down here on Earth. And as you can see from these highlights, there were lots and lots of STEM and STEAM outreach events as well. So really the opportunity was there to do science and inspire new users, the younger generation of microgravity users to get involved. So our AX2 crew continued in this tradition of doing some really exciting research. So our 2 crew from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia did an awful lot of research looking at different kinds of adaptation of the human body to space. So our mission specialist Ali on the far left was a very willing guinea pig for experiments that were looking at how his brain changed in space and how his responses to different kinds of cognitive tests might be affected by the microgravity environment. And on the far right, we had our other Saudi astronaut, our first Saudi female astronaut, doing a lot of research on biology and stem cells in space. And she was looking at the growth of stem cells in space and seeing how they are different after exposure to microgravity. So this whole mission complement consisted of also a bunch of different kinds of experiments that were looking at novel kinds of materials. So we had projects that were looking at self-assembling nanoparticles that can be used for drug discovery, and also looking at 3D printed biological constructs that could be used to help as the building blocks of organs that might in future be able to be used for organ transplantations here on Earth. So some really interesting and exciting medical research. And John Schaffner, our pilot, is a huge STEAM advocate. So he did lots and lots of STEAM and outreach activities while he was up there as well. And that's very important that we feel that we've got to use the microgravity environment to inspire new users in the next generation. And so our most recent mission, our 4 crew returned very shortly ago, not long ago at all. They were extraordinarily busy up there as well. So they had a bunch of different kinds of technology demonstrations that they were doing. So our Swedish astronaut, Marcus Fant, was looking at, I don't want to say he was playing with, I want to say he was testing a device that is an AI-enabled helper that actually was able to fly around the ISS with him and help him perform some of the tasks he was doing. So looking at using the microgravity environment of the ISS to actually develop these new technologies that could be used not only for space exploration, but also in lots of different applications here on Earth. Our Turkish astronaut Alper did an awful lot of research that was brought from his country, where he was looking at plant germination and growth in space, and also using advanced genetic editing techniques to actually understand how changing the activity of genes in space might actually affect their growth patterns, which could have implications for agriculture back here on Earth, but also for potentially gardening on Mars or the moon in future. So growing food, growing all kinds of things potentially on other planets in future. So really exciting work there. And then we also had projects looking at different kinds of food technologies. We had projects looking at stem cells and their proliferation and how that changes in microgravity, which could have impacts on understanding that technology for health advances back here on Earth. We had projects doing technology demonstrations, looking at different kinds of suits that crew could wear that would monitor their physiology, that could help them stay healthy and safe in space for longer periods of time, but could often also be used here, say, potentially with people recovering from surgeries or people in remote environments that might not have access to the same kind of medical health that we might take for granted in more urban areas. So lots and lots of research that was done on AX3 as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Before I give Eytan the mic, just to share a couple of sentences from his experience on board ISS, I just want to remind you that our call for proposal deadline is coming up at the end of the month. You can find all the information at the Rakia mission website, both in 3 languages, Hebrew, Arabic, and English. Following this webinar, you can find over there both the guideline for the call for proposal, frequently asked questions that we already gathered from you, that we received in the last couple of months. We offer here the opportunity, both now and after this webinar, if you have any questions specific for astronauts, Eytan will be happy to answer your questions about how to perform or how to use different devices on board the ISS from his experience. And as John said, if you want to have private meetings with Axiom expert, please send me an email, mention your project and what type of expert you would like us to get from Axiom, and I will coordinate that meeting even now before the submission. So if you need any help with the submission forms, if you want to consult with the Axiom expert before, just send me an email. I already shared my email contact on the chat, and I will share it again in a couple of minutes. You can also submit a question in the email address as info@rakiamission.com. And now, Eytan, if you want to say a couple of words.
Sure, I will add a few words of encouragement to let you know that it seems a high wall to climb, many obstacles and difficult, but it's completely welcome. The whole system is waiting for these ideas. NASA is pushing for Axiom to bring more usage of the ISS platform. There are so many opportunities, not only on the laboratories that are on board, but also those outside. The European module has an outside laboratory, the Japanese as well, and all those are available. And everyone wants to help you put your science up there in the sky, above the sky, in space, through all the experience gained by Axiom of packaging, building everything on time, sending it, preparing the procedures with the Huntsville, putting everything in a timetable of astronauts that are up there. For example, on AX3, we had one of the Israeli experiments continue, the monitoring of the thunderstorms. And that continued, and we have excellent results of that. So it's really possible. Melody, you didn't mention, but part of the call for proposals includes the opportunity for financing. So there is an opportunity to get about 50% or up to 50% of the costs of such an experiment as a donation to any one of you who passes all the route. It needs, like Simon, I think, mentioned, it needs time. So we can't send something tomorrow, but it's feasible. It's not impossible. Thank you.
Thank you, Eytan. So guys and girls, if you have any questions to our experts from Axiom, something that you would like to ask now, you are more than welcome to do it. Just raise your hands and we'll be able to answer your questions. Okay, so first, Paul.
Okay, good evening, and thank you first of all for all the guests and the wonderful presentations. I'm an anesthesiologist in Hadassah, and this is not the first time, but most of the presentations were technical, addressing how we build one module or another, how we produce all kinds of materials, etc., etc., etc. If anyone could give some, at least some general ideas of how a medical bay, an emergency bay, will be built in space, because one of the main problems is you have an acute problem, at least from the International Space Station, in a matter of a few hours, you can just transfer immediately, emergently, sick astronaut on Earth. But if we are considering not only moon, but deep space travel, so what do you do? Thank you.
So that's a great question. So firstly, one of the things that Axiom is interested in developing with partners and with organizations that are working on remote healthcare applications is the concept of a med bay in space. We would love to be able to dedicate some of our resources inside our modules to actually house the kind of healthcare devices that will be needed for remote medicine and remote healthcare. We're also working with a number of companies that are developing AI-guided clinical diagnostic or medical treatment tools that can be used by our teams for remote medical healthcare. But it's also important to bear in mind that Axiom itself is going to be remaining in low Earth orbit to start off with. So we'll still be very close to Earth, relatively speaking. But that said, we're going to be working with a lot of customers and partners that are going to be doing that exploratory work. So we're going to be expecting that LEO and the Axiom station is going to be a really important test bed for a lot of these technologies and devices and frameworks that you're talking about. So Simon and John, I know you had John, you popped up there. I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
So I was just going to mention exactly what Lucy said. I mentioned 25 years of low Earth orbit experience, and it's a phenomenal test bed for all of those things that we may be wanting to use for other applications. We also have a lot of technology that has improved tremendously since the suite of medical devices we use currently were deployed and tested. So there's a lot of innovative ideas going that we're able to take a look at. It's not just Axiom, it's the medical community that's really looking at different innovative applications of new technology, new medicines, new delivery systems, new monitoring, new diagnostics. There's a whole field that is out there, and so that's what the research lab is for, is to test those new markets, test those new ideas, and see if it does have any applicability for any of those other areas as well. So, Simon?
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, John. Paul, does that answer your question sufficiently?
First of all, thank you for the answers. And just to let you know, a new airway device that is designed for rapid airway management for non-medical professional is my idea, as is already, I sent it yesterday to your office.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We will do that.
I see a question in the chat, Melody, from Yoav. The question is it possible to install a payload on the outer part of the station for a long duration, about 2 years? John, could you help us answer that one?
So the short answer is yes. The station program has been doing that for 25 years. From an Axiom perspective, as I remind you, our station, or as we described, our station modules are not going to be delivered for a couple of years, but we can take advantage of those attach points on whether it's on the NASA side, whether it's on the Columbus, the European element. JAXA has a vast platform that's available that we can work with. In most of those cases, we'll need to coordinate with those managers of those facilities, as well as we may need to customize and build some access points and make sure that we're fitting and testing to meet the interface requirements of those specific facilities. It does take a lot longer. And so I will say that is not a 6-month effort. It's going to take a lot of additional testing and operational concept discussions. And in general, if we can go robotic to deploy it, that's phenomenal. If we need crew member to deploy it, that will take a lot of resources. So I would encourage people to come talk to us, like I mentioned before. But again, it's available. It'll just take a lot of discussion.
I see another question in the chat from Omer. So the question is, regarding the call for proposals, which Axiom missions are these expected to be relevant to? Are there already specific Axiom missions planned, and what is the expected timescale for the next mission? Omer, we will assist Rakia to help down select from the large number of proposals that I expect they will be receiving. And then from there, we'll help them build out a program of work. So it's difficult to answer your question specifically without knowing what type of project that is and whether or not that'll be successful. We are continuing to run Axiom missions for the foreseeable future. Initially, well, for now, we're going to continue to fly to the International Space Station as it is. Once Axiom has our first module installed, we have the opportunity to increase our mission frequency if there's a customer demand for that. So we are expecting our AX4 mission to be launching sometime towards the end of 2024. We hope to be flying about 2 missions per year from the future, potentially more.
Let me add to that, Simon, that payloads can be sent on cargo vehicles as well. They don't have to be sent on human flights. I had some cargo sent in advance for me to use during my mission. So it doesn't depend only on the human flights.
Good point. Thanks, Eytan.
Okay. Since it's appeared that we don't have any more questions, I think I will let Inbal Kreis, the chairman of the Rakia Mission Scientific Board, to say a couple of words. In the meantime, if you guys have more questions, you can just send them in the chat and we will answer them after that. Inbal?
Good evening, everybody here. The impact report of AX1 says everything because there is a lot of impact from AX1, and here all the team, we are looking forward continuing this effort and to bring additional impact to the global space ecosystem. We are here for all of you, all the entrepreneurs and all the groups to go with you all the way up to the ISS and to do the mentoring and to help you all the way. And we encourage everyone with ideas, with new technology, with new scientific concept to reply to this call for proposal and to do the submission. And we are here for all of you to any questions or any type of connection that is required. And good luck to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Inbal. So thank you, everyone, for participating in our amazing webinar. I hope it's opened your mind a bit and encourage you to submit to our call for proposals. I will remind you again that if you want to schedule a private meeting with Axiom expert, just send me an email. I will share my email once again in the chat, and I will share the screen in a moment where you can find it. And I'll happy to assist in scheduling that, both for before the submission and also, of course, after the selection process. If you have any other questions regarding the call for proposal itself or anything else, I'm here, I'm available, and be happy to assist you. If there are no further questions, then let me thanks again to our wonderful speakers and expert from Axiom Space. It was wonderful to work with you guys. Thank you for sharing all the information with us, and have a great rest of the night.
Thank you, Melody and
Thank
the
you,
team.
Eytan and the Rakia team.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.